Hello, this is the Monto Centrist here, and I'm here with another political video. Today's going to be talking about a lot of stuff, including the Capitol riots, protests, the comparison to Black Lives Matter, impeachment. Uh, that's pretty much it, I think. Let's start with the Capitol, I guess, siege. I see a lot of people comparing this to Black Lives Matter in a lot of ways. Um, I think they're equally as guilty. Now, as you people are calling this insurrection, not Black Lives Matter, which is strange because it's a violent, I guess, response to the government, and that's kind of what Black Lives Matter is doing. If you want to be completely 100% fair with the definition of insurrection, let me look it up real quick. It's a violent uprising against an authority or government, which this was, okay? But you can apply that to Black Lives Matter insanely easily because they're supposed to be, fighting institutional racism here. And to fight that is to fight the government. Just because you don't storm the Capitol building doesn't mean that the goals are different or any virtuous or more important than these guys are doing. Now, there has been voter irregularity, just like any other, voting. Every time people vote, these things happen. Human error, machines fuck up, but usually they get on it and fix it. People actually committing fraud, committing voter fraud, and uh, you know, stuff like that. That does happen every single time. So it's not like a fucking surprise. Now it's what I can see, or have at least seen is it's not widespread and it's not enough to overturn like the states. So even though they're razor thin on a lot of these states, like less than 10,000, a little bit more than 10,000, and that is an extremely close race, especially when Trump was ahead in all of the states that he lost by more like 100,000, and he lost a little bit by 10,000. That's just insanely close. I can understand why people are kind of like upset and people are just gun ho on this kind of shit. Like people think he's going to get the 25th Amendment vote, but I highly doubt it. I don't see it happening. Now the impeachment is happening. The House already, it seems like the House has already passed it. So I don't think he's going to be impeached. You never know, but that's an ongoing thing right now. So is there likely he's going to get impeached? Probably not, just because the House passed it doesn't mean the Senate's going to pass it. And that's where I think the headway is going to come. I think they're trying to do this because if he gets impeached twice, he can never run again. And that's, I think, the ultimate goal, and that's fine if they want to do that. It's up to them. I have nothing against it really. So that'd be very interesting. People blaming Trump. A lot of pointing fingers of him, I guess, inciting this, right? Now, it wasn't directly, okay, I'll give him some credit here. It wasn't directly, like, go down there and riot. He didn't say those things. But he does have a certain way where he avoids directly it. It wasn't like go and fight and, riot down there. Just peacefully go down there and protest basically, I won't say I can't remember what he said verbatim, but it was basically I don't think it was even indirectly saying to riot and stuff like that. He's like, we're going to march down, which he didn't do. He didn't march down with them. He's like, fuck this. Probably left. It was probably too dangerous for him to march down with them, and I could see it definitely falling under free speech because he doesn't directly call for violence. So, like, just legally speaking, now, my personal beliefs is, well, he didn't directly, incite the riot or, incite, like, the mob mentality and shit like that. I think there's some indirect results from his speech to the whole thing. He said we're going to march down to the Capitol and protest. And then they did exactly that. So there's a fine line between what's free speech and what's not. That reminds me, we're going to talk about Parler just a little bit after my thoughts on this whole debacle. Um, just don't do these kind of things. Even if this was Biden, like, don't fight like this for Biden. Don't fight like this for Trump. None of these guys are fucking worth it. They don't give a shit about you. They're just in it for their own political gain, and that's it. Don't fall for their own shit, the propaganda, their rhetoric, whatever it is. Just don't fight for a single person, okay? And I mean, if you really want to fight or protest, please do peacefully. That's 100% within your rights to do so. But when it crosses the line against, threats and violence, I don't agree with it. No matter what your cause is, no matter how noble you think it is or just or whatever it is, you're not any really on any moral high ground just because you burned down a building or looted it or you stormed the fucking Capitol. You really don't have much to fucking stand on right there in a moral kind of compass, at least in my opinion. And that reminds me of Parler of it being deplatformed now. It was, from what I could tell, a pretty big cesspool of the right wing ideologies, and they shut it down mainly for that. I heard there were some sort of threats on there. I mean, it would be really hard to monitor that. There's a couple 100,000 people on there, so like, even with bots going and people actually monitoring that shit, it'd be really hard to clamp down all the violent talk on there. It'd be near impossible. They don't have the same standards for Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. I mean, sooner or later they're probably going to catch it. Don't get me wrong, but on the other hand, there's going to be some things that slip by you, no matter what bot you're setting up or how rigorous your set up for is to monitor these such things. Some things are going to slip by and through the cracks. Now, a lot of people are pointing the finger of, well, they just deplatformed them because it was competition, which honestly is not a bad tactic to do. They're pretty much standing on this moral high ground of, oh, they're calling, they have these conspiracy theories and stuff, shit like that on there, and this majorly right wing. I notice there's a lot of bias towards the right wing more than the left wing, especially with media and deplatforming stuff. It's usually the right side for some reason, and it's not 100%, down the middle, equally enforced. I noticed that quite a bit, but these companies have the right to do so. I'm not, contesting that. I guess their sentence, their right to do that. That's 100% within their ability to do that, but I think it's very dangerous to go down the slope of not or silencing or censoring, whatever you want to put it, thoughts and ideas that you just don't like or you think are dangerous. Who decides what is dangerous speech besides the obvious? I'm not talking about the obvious threats or obvious calls for violence or shit like that. That's pretty straightforward. But when you get into these things where it's not so direct, and what Trump said wasn't really direct. He says, let's go down to the Capitol and protest, and people think that is inciting the riot. You got a problem there. This goes with just about anything you do. It's very dangerous to say, even though it's hate speech. Let's say hate speech and violent speech. Who decides what's violent? Who decides what's hate speech? This is a very slippery kind of a slope, and I think it's kind of a dangerous thing. I know words can be dangerous as well. You can, cite people to do things that they normally wouldn't do, especially if they believe in you and have this devotion towards you. Words matter, and you can incite certain things from people. So, from my perspective, if it's not blatant, obvious, like, threats or gatherings or, let's, gather all these, equipment and shit like that and storm the castle, so to speak, I think it should be allowed within within reason. Like, there's always that fine line that you shouldn't cross, like direct violence, of course. So we got to be careful what's allowed and not allowed within violent, quote unquote, violent speech and quote unquote hate speech. So we, I think it's really a fine line, and whatever decides that individual companies that could be a real trouble, and them Parler suing, saying like you're just eliminating the competition, which I think is a very good actually strategy to do, because like, not a lot of people like the right wing or even the extreme right wing. Even though you don't have to be extreme, the media is really pounding on the right wing. It doesn't have to be the extreme left wing or whatever it is. If you're right wing, it's a bad thing and should be either deplatformed, blocked, or censored. So that's something I don't 100% agree with, but that's just me. Now, whether or not Trump is going to go to prison or not, I highly doubt it when he gets, after the 20th. There's a lot of talk that he might go to prison, but usually rich people do not go to prison. I just don't see it happening. There's always that possibility, yes, that he will go to prison for all these crimes, whatever. I don't think the citing the violence thing is going to work. I just don't see him getting charged for that either. Just how the wall works right now. So unfortunately, I know a lot of people want his fucking head on a pike, basically. And don't take that as a literal sense, okay? Don't want the fucking FBI coming in here, all right? Just make that fucking perfectly clear. It's just like they just want to see him crash and burn, pretty much more or less, and whatever happens, happens. Prison for 25 years, whatever sentence he'll get. But I highly doubt it. And if he does get convicted or whatever, it's probably going to be pretty light sentence, maybe 10 years, if at all, and he'll get bailed rather easily. I just don't see it, really. Maybe 5 to 10 years. We'll see about that. It's very like our justice system is very iffy, and it's very complicated, and who knows what will happen to him once he leaves office. But it's been a very interesting week. Don't do violence. I don't care if you're left wing, right wing, center. Do not invoke violence. I don't give a shit what cause you think it is, how virtuous you think this is, or how much good you're doing. Don't resort to violence. And a lot of these people from the Capitol have been arrested and facing felony charges. I wish it was more evenly spread, and sadly, that's not going to happen. This is, you know, the media and a lot of people agree with the Black Lives Matter, so it's kind of let go. It's just not just looting Target. I've seen, well, they're just looting buildings. That's not a big deal, but arson's a pretty big crime. That's a felony also. I've seen a lot of people's business burned down, just not big businesses, small businesses that were actually owned by black people nonetheless. A lot of people died during these, and it doesn't justify what you're doing. Okay, I don't give a shit what side you're on. Either you're storming the fucking Capitol, or you're burning down the fucking building, or looting the building. It's the same thing to me, at least. No, legally wise, of course, that's a different fucking story entirely. But I think you don't have really much of a moral standpoint over what's one is worse than one another. It's just me. Just perfectly to make that straight. That's my opinion on it. I think I pretty much covered everything. Hopefully, things calm down after the 20th, and we don't see too much censoring of, speech, what's hateful, what's not hateful, what's violent, what's not violent. This can be turned into a bad thing, of course, but it's kind of like a wait and see. And I'm willing to give Biden a chance. He's promised a lot of things. Now let's see you do some of these things that you fucking said you're gonna do. Okay, that's pretty much my outlook on Biden. I don't personally fucking hate him. I don't give a shit if he's left wing, right wing. I don't give a shit if he's Democrat, fucking Republican. I just want to see him do something. Let's see him do something. That's pretty much my stance on Biden. We'll fucking wait and see, kind of the thing on that. But I pretty much addressed all the comparisons and whether or not Trump's going to go to prison, if he's going to face, all this shit that they might do, like the impeachment in prison, and the comparisons of Black Lives Matter and this, and the Capitol siege. So that's pretty much all I got to say about that. Thank you for listening. Rate, comment, subscribe.